Welcome to our channel on the best of fantasy. We are Storytoob. If you have never seen our channel before, we do booktube tributes. And today is none other than Dr. Fantasy himself, Phillip Chase. Here on Storytoob, we love paying tribute to the wonderful, kind, generous, wonderful, kind, intelligent, generous, wonderful people here on BookTube. And Phillip Chase is the most horrible person of them all. If this is your first time on the channel, we want to explain a little bit about what it is we do on these BookTube tributes. Well, we're going to read some of Phillip's favorite books. Isn't that right, Yolanda?
That is, yeah.
Do you want to say something now, Yolanda? Why don't you explain to the fine folks here on YouTube what it is we're going to be reading, Yolanda? Explain what this silliness is.
The purpose of this is that we have picked a bunch of books that are some of Philip's favorites, books that Philip has sold us on, books that we are more enthusiastic to read, to pick up because of how Philip talks about them. And we're going to pile them on our coffee table essentially for the month of May, and we're going to be picking from them and reading some of them. And because Philip is, of course, Dr. Fantasy, mostly they're going to be fantasy books, and because Philip is also old, they're going to be some old books.
But the important thing is people were very kind to me.
So the purpose of this video really is for us to go through the books that we're going to put on our coffee table and list them out for you.
We're hoping that these books will be rich in beautiful themes and wonderful prose and magnificent storytelling, and hopefully we'll be able to have an enriched, lovely experience with these books.
Some of the best that fantasy has to offer.
All right, who's kicking off this silliness? That sounded a bit too evil. I'm sorry, Philip. It's all in the chin, isn't it? Philip, you've got a great jawline. All right. Yolanda, would you like to kick us off with the first books here?
Absolutely.
Why do I sound like a baseball presenter?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Of course, we have to have the Adan trilogy on this list, written by Dr. Fantasy himself, Phillip Chase.
Wonderful, beautiful, wonderful, intelligent, wonderful man. Kind, wonderful,
Generous.
fine folks here on BookTube.
Yeah. So I actually read The Way of Adan last year when the first one came out, but I didn't read The Prophet of Adan, so I will put The Prophet of Adan on my pile, but The Way of Adan will be on the pile for you.
I have to hold it like this. Ironically, I will not be reading The Way of Adan for the month of Philip, and let me tell you why, fine folks here on BookTube. I am waiting for Alan to finish the audiobook. Please, Alan, finish the audiobook. Give it to the fine folks here on Storytoob. Also, since this is Dr. Fantasy, we're going to be reading a lot of fantasy. And I might be fantasied out. I will clarify that statement momentarily. So, yeah, I'm going to save this book for when Alan finishes the audiobook because I would love to experience this story with Alan's voices.
Fair.
So, and also, you already read this book.
Yeah.
So there's your tribute.
Since we might be fantasied out, like you mentioned, there might be the occasion to throw in something short and light, just as a little bit of a palate cleanser between all the hefty, big masterworks of fantasy that Phillip has sold us on. Just like 120 pages, large margins, must be a quick read. So I think we will both be throwing in Beowulf. Of course, being the token Irish duo on BookTube, we have to read the Seamus Heaney translation because otherwise
Required.
Yeah, lightning might strike us from the sky.
In keeping with that wonderful theme of Irishness and Philip being old and a bit of a medievalist, I will be reading a handful of early Irish myths and sagas. I will pick and choose several stories out of this little book, this collection of Celtic myths from Ireland. Now, I know Philip has talked about his love for Welsh mythology and Welsh Celtic mythology. I would put good money on the fact that he's read some of the stories in this book, and as a matter of fact, so have I in school. For example, the tales of Cuchulainn and the Ulster Cycle. I will reread a couple and maybe throw in some that I've never heard of. And I have this wonderful, beautiful, rich edition of Penguin Classics.
I might join you for some of those. And since I myself am blessed with German ancestry, I might be reading Das Nibelungenlied.
Das ist wunderbar. If you have been following this channel, Storytoob specifically, since the start of this year, you'll know what journey I have embarked upon. And there would be no month of Phillip Chase without a book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson.
Since Phillip Chase is the reason that we know it's the Malazan Book of the Fallen and not Malazan.
Malazan. I'm going to be reading House of Chains, Book 4 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I will be reading Book 4 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. Great.
Next up is another shared potential experience.
Author
That we might dabble into, and it is Mark Lawrence. I myself might be reading Red Sister, since the Book of the Ancestor is a trilogy that Phillip Chase has praised as being one of his favorites, I believe, in fantasy. So I might give that a go. I also might cheat and be a little bit cheeky and read
How dare you, Yolanda?
in the spirit of Dr. Fantasy. I might also sneak in Emperor of Thorns, which is the third in the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence.
A favorite series of mine.
So it is. And that's one that I've been meaning to finish this year, so not really a new thing that Phillip sold me on, but I do think that he is one of the few booktubers that are very positive on all of Mark Lawrence's back catalogue and a champion of his fantasy. So I might be throwing that one in there.
I approve. And in keeping with the wonderful theme of Mark Lawrence, Philip and I share a favorite author here in fantasy. That is Mark Lawrence, who just so happens to be coming out with a new book. And I'm hoping that Philip will grace us with his presence here on Storytoob and have a riveting discussion about the book that broke the world. I think I can fit this one in because it's actually significantly shorter than the first book. Anyway, Mark Lawrence is one of my favorite fantasy authors, and I'm very excited for his new release. And I had mentioned to Philip a couple of months ago that I'd probably be reading it when it comes out. It's coming out in a couple of days, so I'll throw it onto the May TBR. And then maybe, Philip, if you'd like to discuss the book, we can set up a chat, and we can chat about Mark Lawrence. What else have we got?
I think we have one more book, is that right?
That's correct.
One more book on the list, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first in a trilogy that I think is called The Broken Earth. The Broken Earth, The Broken Empire are two very similar titles. There's a theme going on here. The broken stuff. The Fifth Season is a book that Philip reviewed on his channel with his daughter, and it was a great review and a great idea for a book review, and it's always stuck with me. Now I relate that book with that review, so I would like to read it as a tribute to Philip in the month of Philip, which of course is the whole purpose of this entire TBR.
That's a really beautiful thing.
It's quite wonderful and special and beautiful.
And it's beautiful and magical.
Yeah.
It's just fabulous. It's a fantastic time.
So once again, we are delighted to be able to pay tribute to one of the pillars of the BookTube community.
One of the finest folks here on BookTube. A magical, wonderful, kind, generous, intelligent, wonderful person.
We are so lucky to be able to exist in the same online space as Dr. Fantasy. And in May, we will be reading as many as we can of the books that we have presented you with. If you are interested in what we think about those books and you are not yet subscribed to the channel, this is your cue to subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you liked it. Let us know in the comments if you want to read any of these books with us.
And remember,
Until next time.